Well, good morning, everybody.
Good morning. Good morning.
How many of you here are money experts? Okay, no hands. I'm not raising my hand. Byron, I would say that, I mean, having talked with you, I would say that you are a monetary expert. Yeah, because it's not just about money. It's monetary things, you know. So anyway, we're all here to learn. I thought I knew a fair amount about how things are run, and Byron came at a completely different angle than I thought that I had previously thought about. So it's good. So let's just open our minds and open our hearts, you know, and see what we can learn. I mean, it's a privilege to have you here, and let's give him a welcome. Byron Dale.
Thank you so much. Don't mean to make you drop your coffee. Well, I'm probably come at this a little different than most people do because I came at it from a total different angle. I used to be a rancher in South Dakota, and I married a sweet little girl, and she was 19 and I was 22, and we went to work, and we started out, and I got 640 acres of deeded land from my dad on the contract for deed where I owed most of it. We had 640 acres at least. And 18 years later, we had a 5,000 acre ranch and was worth $1 million. And I began to wonder, well, just how was it that I could produce so much wealth, but it was so hard to get ahead cash-wise? And what really made me first jolt that I really began to think about this whole concept was, 1 3-year period, we made $160,000 above all expenses, and we ended up deeper in debt the 3rd year than we did when we started. And I said, how is that possible? I couldn't understand that. So I started thinking about it, and I went to a management meeting in Denver, Colorado. And
Byron, just 1 second.
Okay, can everybody hear me now? There we go. Great. Well, I hope you heard what I said, or do you want me to repeat it?
Let's repeat it.
Okay, well, I'll just start over, because like I said when I got up here, my whole concept of monetary policy and monetary knowledge is probably different than you've ever read about before, unless you've read some of my literature, because I started at it a totally different angle than most people did. I have not got a degree in economics, wouldn't want one, I don't think, but I have had a lot of degree in hard knocks and personal experience, and I've learned all this through personal study and things, and like I told you, I started out when I was 22 and my wife was 19, and we got married, and we bought some land from my dad at 640 acres on a contract for deed, and we had 640 acres of lease that came with it, and we went to work. And we worked hard, apparently quite successful, because 18 years later we had a 5,000 acre ranch and was worth $1 million. But 1 3-year period, we had $160,000 profit above all expenses. But yet we ended up deeper in debt than we did when we started the 3 years before, and I said, how can that possibly be possible? So I was always trying to figure out how to be more profitable. At that time I was quite interested in money, but not the same way I am now. Today I'm interested in how it works and how it affects our lives. Then I was only interested in how to get more of it, which is what I find most people's interests are. They don't really care about it, they just want more of it. And so we went to a management meeting in Denver, Colorado to figure out how to be more profitable. And a very interesting management conference. I learned an awful lot, but during the process they had a sheet of paper laying there, and it was going through actual farm expenses for personal operations kept by the management firm and the farmer together. And this conference was put on by what was called Beef Magazine that I used to subscribe to when I was back on the ranch, and a management firm out of Boulder, Colorado. And it went through it, I began to notice that, you know, some of these people, some of them getting more assets, some of them weren't so much, but every one of them was getting deeper in debt. I thought that was kind of strange, because I went there kind of basically the idea, how do I get out of debt, you know, and how do I get more wealth without debt? And so I asked the speaker, Roy Ferguson, I said, I don't understand, where's all the money come from? He said, well, it just printed off a printing press. Oh, okay, I've looked in my pocket and I've seen some stuff that looked like come off a printing press, and I've been to Washington, D.C. and watched them print the actual currency. And I said, okay, if that's true, if we all borrow it off the printing press, who gets interest off the printing press? And he said, nobody. And I said, well, I could buy the first one, but I'm having a hard time buying this because That don't make sense to me. If they printed it and we all borrowed it and we paid interest on it, how could somebody not be getting the interest right off the printing press? And he got a funny look on his face, and he turned across the room and said, "What was it that you wanted?" And just like that, I disappeared. And as far as he knew, he never acknowledged that I even existed the whole rest of the conference. And so when I walked out of that particular session, a woman walked by me, and she kind of elbowed me just a little bit. And I looked to see what was going on, and she said, "You need to look into the Federal Reserve." I didn't even have much of a clue what she was talking about. But anyway, I went home and I began to study this, and my wife and I, we decided that we needed to know everything they taught us down there and exactly how it worked. And so she kept the books of the ranch, and so I said, "Well, why don't you sit down and figure it out?" And she said, "I wouldn't have a clue. You're the one that wants to know. Why don't you do it?" I don't know how to do it either. So together we did sit down and we figured it out. And when we got through, I probably had a greater knowledge of everything about my ranch than I'd ever dreamed possible before, where we was headed, where we'd been. And at one time, my wife had a set of books that she could go from 1963 till 1982, and she could account for every penny that went through our booking, our whole ranching system, which I don't think many people can do that. And it seems like Denny Hecker and Fetters and some of these guys can't seem to do that, so, and other people too. And so, but I really got into it, and I started reading some books, and I called the state library, and at that time they had an 800 number, and I could call them, and I'd ask for books, and they say, "Well, do you have any particular books or authors or titles?" And I said, "No, I just want to know about this particular subject today." And so they'd send me some books, and I began to understand it. And one day I was down there at the library, and I was wanting to know, Roosevelt changed the weight of the gold dollar in '33, and I knew from what it used to be, but I couldn't find any place what he changed it to. So I was down to the library one day, and I was trying to find out, and they was trying to find it for me, and they couldn't. And so one time in my life, I had a little charm, so I went to the librarian, and she was a nice lady, and I convinced her that she should call Washington, D.C. to see if she could find out where they changed it. And we ended up calling a lady by the name of Dolly Wells. And Dolly Wells, she listened, but she said, "I don't know, but if you'd write me a letter, I'd probably be able to find it for you and answer your letter." I said, "Okay." But I was kind of impatient in those days, and so I convinced the librarian she should call somebody else. And she was on the phone for exactly an hour, and she went from person to person, and everybody said, "I don't know, but if you'd call so-and-so, I think they would know." The last person we talked to said, "Well, I don't know, but if you'd call Dolly Wells, I'm sure she would know." And I've called that the Royal Washington Shuffle. You get shuffled from here and there, and nobody knows anything and won't tell you anything. But that's what started me writing to the letters to the Treasury, and that's what this book is. It's the second book I ever put out, and it's basically letters that I wrote to the Treasury and their answers. And it starts over here. This is my actual letter that I wrote in '82, and this is the answers that I got from Russell L. Monk, the General Counsel of the United States Treasury. And we'll start out with this third paragraph. When the economy grows and there are more economic transactions, more money is needed to pay for them. And that's pretty self-obvious, isn't it? If we had 10 people in the room, or 10 people in the society, and they each had to have $10, we'd have to have $100 worth of money, wouldn't we? But if people seem to have this tendency to multiply, I don't know if you've noticed that, but I have, and I've noticed it happens. And so if there got to be 20 families or 20 people in the community, and they needed now the same one, $10, well, now you'd have to have $200 because you'd have to have more money. So the question is, where does this money come from, and how does it get into circulation? And so Russell Monk went on and wrote, if the money supply is to be increased, money must be created. The Federal Reserve Board, or the Fed as it's often called, has several ways of allowing money to be created. But the actual creation of money always involves the extension of credit from a private commercial bank. And you hear everybody talking about how the Fed creates all the money, but that's not true. All the money, and they've changed that a little bit lately, I think, but it's created in your local commercial private bank, the bank right down on the corner. And when you go down there to get a loan, they simply make an entry in your books, and I'll show you that in a little bit, and create the money.